This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting out or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it easy to create a beautiful website, engage your audience, and sell anything from products to content to time. All in one place, all on your terms. Hey Spuds, it's Jamie. Welcome back to another video. If I've been on the channel, I don't know, but welcome either way. I'm very glad to have you here. And today, we are having a little dive into a subreddit I found called Enough JK Rowling. The about just says, trigger warning, transphobia. We've all had enough, right? This is getting ridiculous. And taking it away from JK Rowling and just looking at anybody saying this about a marginalized community and saying this much stuff at this level of frequency is getting pretty ridiculous. So I wanted to have a look at some of these things that are really getting called out and just should not be said if you have any respect for other people. It's very bizarre behavior. Hello, future Jamie here, just popping in because an important thing happened since I filmed this that I really think needs to be included in this video. So I filmed the rest of this video before the UK Supreme Court ruling happened, where it basically said that the definition of a woman is based off of biological sex. So this would seem to exclude trans women from legally being defined as women, but include trans men as being legally defined as women. It's an attack on trans rights and the trans community that's been thinly veiled as an attempt at protecting cis women's rights, and being done in the name of feminism. It's not only harmful to the trans community, and honestly just a really, really shitty thing to happen, but will also be harmful to cis women who do not adhere to the tough subjective vibe of what a woman looks like. If a cis woman is a bit masculine, she's gonna get harassed and approached in a bathroom or a woman's space. It's already happening. It's not feminism at all, it's bigotry. Now I wanted to add the extra bit in here because JK Rowling herself has been quite involved in this Supreme Court case and has also been making a fool of herself on social media in the aftermath. Firstly, she reportedly donated £70,000 towards the case being taken to the Supreme Court, which was roughly a third of the entire amount raised by the transphobic group For Women Scotland to progress this case. So it's fair to say that she's probably a very big part of why this case was able to get as far as it got in the first place. An abortion support organisation actually shared that self-proclaimed feminist JK Rowling's £70,000 could have funded the cost of every abortion they've done so far this year. You'd think that a true feminist would much rather put their worth towards actually helping people rather than taking away the rights of a marginalised community. After the court case was won by the TERFs, JK Rowling posted a photo of herself smoking a cigar and drinking on her super yacht with the caption, "I love it when a plan comes together." To anyone with an ounce of sense, knowledge and compassion, she just looks really stupid doing this. Her post has been compared to a post made by Andrew Tate. She also tweeted that, "We toasted you at For Women Scot. Neil says it's TERF VE Day. Laughing, smiling emoji. Hashtag Supreme Court. Hashtag women's rights." The women's rights that are now rolling back. VE Day is the 8th of May and marks the end of Europe fighting against Nazi Germany during World War II. What a wholly inappropriate and very weird comparison to make. TERFs are fighting a battle that they've made up in their head that has no place in actual reality, yet they think it's some win comparable to a win during World War II. Unfortunately, they seem to have so much money and resource to put behind this. That's the reason why they do actually make some progress with things. Personally, I feel like one tweet that sums all of this up quite nicely is the following. JK Rowling always says, "Don't let men define what a woman is," because she actually believes that it takes 3 men to define what a woman is. 3 old cis white men. In short, it's so ridiculous because there is evidence that trans women do not pose a threat to cis women in women's spaces, and there is also evidence that cis men are not pretending to be trans women to gain access to women's spaces. They are genuinely fighting an entirely made up fight and taking the rights away from a marginalized group in the process, and then also impacting the rights of the group that they claim to be protecting, cis women. So what TERFs are actually celebrating right now, and the reason why they look really stupid, is they are celebrating something that is bad for cis women and bad for all trans people. By forcing trans women out of women's spaces, you are forcing trans men into them. And if TERFs are so concerned about predatory cis men pretending to be trans women to gain access to women's spaces, surely what they've done now, definitely what they've done now, is made it easier for those predatory cis men to gain access to women's spaces by simply stating they are trans men. They don't need to do anything. If I don't tell people I'm trans, they assume I am a cis man. It's way more likely that a predatory cis man will pretend to be a trans man than a trans woman, especially given that there is no evidence that they're pretending to be trans women in the first place. And it's already happening that cis women who do not conform to a stereotypical set of feminine ideals are being harassed and kicked out of women's spaces because transphobes think they are trans women. This is what the TERFs have achieved. This is what people like JK Rowling are celebrating, whether they know it or not. Transphobia is so ridiculously dumb. There is no excuse to continue supporting J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter. Keep the stuff you already have. Enjoy it privately, whatever. But to put money in her pocket to buy into the new things coming out for Harry Potter and to buy into Harry Potter as a franchise literally puts money towards causes that takes trans people's rights away, as is proved by this £70,000 donation. I wanted to end this little cutaway with some of the positives that have come out from this, because when this first happened, I felt very upset. I felt very angry. I felt very frustrated. I didn't know what I could do. I'm recording this 4 or 5 days after the ruling has happened, and I have to say my head is in a completely different space. I'm still frustrated. I'm still a bit scared. However, there has been an overwhelmingly huge amount of love come out for the trans community in the aftermath of this. It's showing that this transphobia is not the majority view, and it's not a majority view, logic, or facts that won a Supreme Court case right now. It was money, power, lies, ignorance, and bigotry. The aftermath has seen influential figures like Bridgerton's Nicola Coughlan raise tens of thousands. I think it's actually over £100,000 right now as I'm making this video for a trans-led organisation, not a phase. And from what I can find, there were nearly 30 protests happening all throughout the UK in support of trans rights, with London having tens of thousands of people showing up and multiple others having thousands of people showing up. There's been ones in Glasgow, Bristol, Brighton, Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool, Cardiff, Nottingham, and many, many more. Compare this to maybe a dozen TERFs who were at the Supreme Court ruling going with their glasses of wine, celebrating the fact that they have just scored an own goal. And there were some reports that counter-protesters did show up to at least one of the trans-supportive protests, but only in very, very tiny numbers, and they quickly left. Anyway, it was really important for me to include this in here. Thank you for listening. And now we'll switch back to Past Jamie for the rest of the video. Thank you. So we've been talking about having enough and being totally fed up with J.K. Rowling, but do you know something that you just can't get enough of? My very real and not at all made up new business ventures. Yay! Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. You may remember that earlier this month I announced my hamster school with a very inclusive curriculum, including about trans people. Well, unfortunately, despite a very positive start, I have the following statement to read. Hello, puny humans. We hamsters found the hamster school through Jamie's amazing website that was built using Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform full of abso-squeakly amazing features that your idea's been waiting for. We've been able to learn all we need to learn in order to continue living our best hamster lives with absolutely no plans for world domination. This does mean that the hamster school will be closing for the time being. Thank you. There you go. On that totally normal and not at all worrying note, if you've ever thought of starting your own website, have you considered Squarespace? I can highly recommend, and so can the hamsters. Whatever service you might want to offer, from events to experience to consultations, show them off with your very own website through Squarespace. Once you've decided on your website idea, Squarespace's pre-built layouts let you organize all your different elements how you want them, making it really simple to design a professional looking website that fits your needs. You can then customize your pages all with a simple drag and drop. Something that really helped my hamster school flourish was Squarespace's built-in scheduling and email marketing tools. To book appointments with prospective new hamster students and keep hamster families up to date with weekly email newsletters, I was booked back to back. And Squarespace's very handy analytics let me check on things like top traffic sources and the geography of site visitors. You can also get insights on sales metrics and understand how your reach is growing, with Squarespace giving you all the data you need to scale your business. Sharpeni's actual Squarespace website was super easy and fun to make and not going anywhere. Squarespace gave us the freedom to get creative, link our social media platforms, and show off our podcast 1-800-DRAMA. To get started yourself, go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Jammidodger for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. The link is in the description box. Thank you so much for listening. Now let's get back to the video. So this is one that happened recently where somebody tweeted out, what actor/actress instantly ruins a movie for you? J.K. Rowling had no reason to interact with this. She could have said a name of someone who's a genuinely not good actor. Instead she goes, 3 guesses. Sorry, but that was irresistible. And there's been speculation over this being about Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and Emma Watson, because they have all spoken out against her transphobia and denounced it. So Daniel Radcliffe speaks out on J.K. Rowling over trans rights. In a statement, the actor Ron Weasley in the Potter film said, "I firmly stand with the trans community." And Emma Watson speaks out for trans rights after J.K. Rowling's controversial comments. Then somebody else posted Rowling's reply of 3 guesses and said, "If you're planning to watch that HBO Harry Potter series, I really hope you understand 2 things. One, she pushed this reboot because the original cast have publicly supported the trans community and she wants a do-over that doesn't involve them. Two, putting money into her pocket will directly harm trans folks and specifically trans kids. She uses her wealth to block bills that would protect trans youth. It's different than just hate speech, which is bad enough. Harry Potter at this point does not need to still be relevant. I get it, if you love the books, if you love the movie, if there's nostalgia there, fine, but we don't need new stuff, and we certainly don't need to be putting any more money into Rowling's pocket, seeing as for quite a while her pinned tweet on her Twitter has been the following. So somebody said, "You are a stupid and horrible woman. My kids and I enjoyed burning your books and roasting marshmallows over your pathetic books." And she replied to that saying, "I get the same royalties whether you read them or burn them. Enjoy your marshmallows." So we really don't need to be giving her any more money. Oh yeah, there was a news thing. J.K. Rowling knocked off top of British bestsellers list. And I think she was knocked off the list by, was it The Gruffalo? Yes, Julia Donaldson, who wrote the children's picture book The Gruffalo, overtook the Harry Potter writer to become Britain's best-selling author since Accurate Records began. Yay! How did transgender children in the US become so politicized? Transphobia. The US Supreme Court is likely to uphold a flimsy and bad faith Tennessee law banning gender-affirming care for minors. They've clearly not looked into the signs. What did J.K. Rowling have to say about that? Minors sterilized, healthy breasts cut off teenaged girls, a total failure to address kids' mental health problems, and a major study suppressed because it didn't show what an ideologue doctor wanted it to. You're only upset because baddies brainwashed you. Trans kids accessing gender-affirming care is mostly social support and mental health support, and then maybe puberty blockers. And that's what's been banned. If I'd had access to puberty blockers, I would not have needed top surgery. So this like healthy breasts cut off teenage girls, one is just a really bizarre thing. Like, why do all the transphobes talk about
healthy breasts?
It's really weird behavior, okay? Secondly, that gender-affirming care is life-saving. Gender-affirming care, sometimes referred to as transition-related care, is life-saving healthcare for transgender people of all ages. And the whole like failure to address kids' mental health problems, you're refusing them access to gender-affirming care that has been shown time and time again to help increase well-being, make mental health of those kids and trans people of any age better by allowing them to access gender-affirming care. Gender-affirming care is always delivered in age-appropriate, evidence-based ways, and decisions to provide care are made in consultation with doctors and parents. Collectively representing more than 1.3 million doctors across the United States, every major medical and mental health organization, including the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the American Psychological Association, recognizes that it is medically necessary to support people in affirming their gender identity. Gender-affirming care is medically necessary for the well-being of many transgender and non-binary people who experience symptoms of gender dysphoria. 16 studies to date have examined the impact of gender-affirming medical care for transgender youth. Existing evidence suggests that gender-affirming medical care results in favorable mental health outcomes. All major medical organizations oppose legislation that would ban gender-affirming medical care for transgender adolescents. Research demonstrates that gender-affirming care, a medical and psychosocial health care designed to affirm individual gender identities, greatly improves the mental health and overall well-being of gender-diverse, transgender, and non-binary children and adolescents. And then talking about a major study suppressed because it didn't show what an ideologue doctor wanted it to, where is the reference to that study? Like, anybody reading that tweet, taking it on face value of like, oh my god, a major study was suppressed because it didn't fit a worldview of somebody who's like trans positive. Clearly the transphobes are right then. You need to give like a reference to that and show what it is. Every single time a transphobe has referred to a study as a gotcha and been like,
this study proves that transphobia is justified and trans people shouldn't have access to gender-affirming care and trans people aren't valid.
Every time they talk about that, I go away and I read the study. If they bother to reference it, most of the time it's all just lip service because they're not actually talking about anything real. If there is actually something genuine they're talking about, every time, like I mean it, 100% of the time that I've gone and read that study, they have completely misinterpreted it, or there is a revision to that study that counters the conclusions that the TERF has made about the study. So what is this major study? Every single study I have read about the gender affirmative approach is very positive towards the gender affirmative approach because it is the correct approach to take. Congratulations to every single person on the left who's been campaigning to destroy women's and girls' rights. Without you, there'd be no images like this. And then it's an image of Trump surrounded by a lot of girls and women. Shockingly white, shockingly blonde girls and women. I don't think there is a single person of colour in that photograph. Hold on a second. Is J.K. Rowling trying to say that it is the fault of people on the left who support trans rights that Trump is now in power. This is very weird. Like, let's just take away like trans as being what we're talking about and just talk like on a hypothetical top level about a marginalized group within society. Marginalized group within society does not have equal rights, faces a lot of discrimination, faces poor mental health because of these reasons, and does not have appropriate access to healthcare. These are all the things we're dealing with. That group of people starts to get a bit more representation in society. Bunch of arseholes then go, no, for reasons that I don't understand and I don't know and I can't find any solid reasoning for, I don't think you should do that. I don't think you deserve equal rights. No, I don't want that. That all stokes some culture war over politicization of this marginalized group that started off with just like, hello, please, equal rights, and just be treated like a member of society like everybody else wants to be. And then that leads to those bigots who are like,
no, you don't deserve these very sensible things that you're asking for and perfectly doable and perfectly reasonable. No, you don't deserve them because I don't understand you.
Because they said that, they're then blaming people who are like, hold on a second, let's not be a dick, on the fact that Trump is now in power. Like, how does that make it make sense? Like, literally, transphobes are the ones that have caused trans people to become this big culture war thing that seems to be up for a debate when human rights are not a debate and existence of people within society is not a debate. It's transphobes who have made this an issue within society. Trans people have been around forever. It's just become the new trend to be transphobic. You look back in history, J.K. Rowling is the transphobic equivalent of Anita Bryant, who was a homophobe from the 70s.
Anita, you're a person with a rather sizable investment in your career. Why are you taking this stand now and perhaps jeopardizing that? According to the Word of God, it's an abomination. He would go to jail rather than to hire known homosexuals into their schools. And our pastor said that he would do the same and would even burn the school rather than allow them to be taught by homosexuals. And we feel as strongly.
You look back on her now and it's horrifying, the shit that she said. That's how we're going to view people like J.K. Rowling in 10, 20 years' time. And I hope they view themselves that way as well. I really, really hope that these people have this wake-up call and this realization of the hurt they've caused and the damage they've caused. Thrilled to announce I'll be appearing alongside India Willoughby in an exciting new BBC documentary, Why Men Make Better Women Than Women. India will be coaching me on where I've been going wrong all these years, and the whole thing will be filmed inside India's Fiat 500. I'm frankly alarmed by the number of people who know this is an April Fool's joke but wish it was true. Maybe if J.K. Rowling did sit down seriously with a tiny little bit of openness in her mind and heart, then maybe it would actually help. I don't know. Maybe this is very wishful, naive thinking on my part. But the whole like, why men make better women than women. Trans women are not men. Like, fundamentally, you can have a belief that trans women are men and that trans men are women, but your belief does not change the fact that that's wrong and that trans women are women and trans men are men. Science, medicine, all the major medical boards support the gender-affirming approach. There is so much literature out there, one showing scientific theories of how trans people come to be, such as like development in the womb, brain studies showing trans people at all different stages of transition, including those who haven't started hormone therapy yet, showing their brain structures being more in line with their gender identity than their assigned birth sex, and then just also the lived experience of these trans people who are not being listened to right now. Transphobes have just done this, and they're just spewing shit from their own brain that has no place in reality. It does not make sense. It feels so obsessive. Like your April Fool's joke was a dig at trans people. Oh, her most recent thing from when I'm making this video, but Switchboard make this very sweet post about International Asexuality Day. So asexuality is where a person experiences little to no sexual attraction. Asexual people can form deep emotional connections in relationships, but don't experience sexual attraction in the same way as others. Asexual people are historically incredibly ignored in pretty much every conversation, but also are vulnerable to things like sexual violence. A study into violence found that nearly half of asexual participants had experienced some form of sexual violence. And there's another that stated that asexual women in particular are vulnerable to corrective From somebody like J.K. Rowling, who is stating that she's coming from a feminist perspective on this view on trans people that she has, and her primary goal seems to be protecting women. Yet now this isn't even anything to do with trans people, but is a community where particularly the women within that community are vulnerable to sexual violence and assault. And yet what she tweets on International Asexuality Day is Happy International Fake Oppression Day to everyone who wants complete strangers to know they don't fancy a shag. The last time I heard the word shag was in Austin Powers. Okay, there is literally a definition and description of asexuality in the post that she has shared. Yet she's completely ignored that, and also a very quick search into it would show you the vulnerability of asexual people to sexual violence. Yeah, just completely ignored. No, don't care about that. I'm just gonna have a cheap laugh. Everyone's been saying this. It doesn't stop at the tea. Bigots are like onions, and there are layers and layers and layers. We don't know J.K. Rowling's opinion on everything, but like, this isn't just tea now. It's not just the tea that she has a problem with, apparently. She's also now going after asexual people. I hate to disappoint, but you don't turn me into a quivering heap of anguish by telling me I am or look old. I've lost too many people too young to feel anything but celebratory about still being around in my 60th year, and if you're lucky, you'll feel that way one day too. This is something I agree with. Go after what she says. Don't go after the way she looks or her age. And I see it as a privilege to be able to get older and experience more of life. So, wow, look at me agreeing with something. Then someone's replied going, what if we misgendered you like Bindia Bully Booby does? I don't know what position that person is coming from. I'm assuming they're talking about India Willoughby. Rowling said, if you misgender me, I will make a 2-hour video sobbing and shaking with rage in the front seat of my car. Obviously, because I literally can't exist unless everyone agrees I'm a woman. Hashtag Tinkerbell syndrome. It's just totally misunderstanding and just being an asshole towards trans people. You're cis, you don't have gender dysphoria. But how would you know what it feels like? Because I literally can't exist unless everyone agrees I'm a woman. Very close to realizing something maybe here, that trans women are still women, despite what J.K. Rowling thinks about them. Despite what transphobes think about trans women, they are still women. We don't need bigots to accept trans people for trans people to be valid and be the gender that they are. But bigotry and discrimination towards a marginalized group does have a negative impact on well-being of that group, does impact the lives within society, the openness that that group can have, the rights that that group has when we have loud bigoted voices against that group. That comment is just mocking at this point, which is just bullying type behavior. I don't recognize you anymore. I can't reconcile the person who wrote such a wonderful book series about love and tolerance, about being an outsider, to who you are now. Isn't it a quote from Harry Potter that's like, what is it? Doesn't matter who you're born, but who you grow to be kind of vibe. It matters not what someone is born, but what they grow to be. J.K. Rowling replied to this, saying, you appear to have skipped the bits where a narcissistic villain and his acolytes, all of whom had an innate advantage over those they were persecuting, tried to create a totalitarian state with themselves as leaders, all while claiming they were the truly oppressed ones. This paragraph describes what transphobes are doing. Narcissistic villain and his acolytes, all of whom had an innate advantage over those they were persecuting, because we know TERFs love to play oppression Olympics and not recognize that like women's rights and other types of rights can still be fought for and discussed, and trans rights do not take away from that. Trans people and trans women in particular are so discriminated against, are at a disadvantage within society to cis people, try to create a totalitarian state with themselves as leaders, all while claiming they were the truly oppressed ones. Bigots victimize themselves all the time. You can have your experience, you can have sympathy for that, you can get support for that, people can be on your side over that, as they should be, but that does not give you a right to use that negative experience you had with this group over here, cis men, to discriminate against this group over here that are nothing to do with cis men. And I'm not just talking about J.K. Rowling here, like just transphobes and people with these kind of viewpoints in general. I wish you would use your immense power for good. Your hateful focus on trans kids is hurtful and unnecessary. Totally agree with that. J.K. Rowling replied, there are no trans kids. Every trans adult was a trans kid, whether they knew it or not. Trans is not something that you suddenly become or you attach. It is something you are born as. No child is born in the wrong body. I've said this a lot. That's very old terminology of like born in the wrong body. It was just a simplification to help cis people understand, and now many transphobic cis people have just weaponized it. There are only adults like you prepared to sacrifice the health of minors to bolster your belief in an ideology that will end up wreaking more harm than lobotomies and false memory syndrome combined. This video is proving much harder to make than I expected it to be. I thought we were going to be like, let's laugh at some of the most batshit things that she's said recently. And obviously I know that there are some very seriously damaging things she said, and I've covered it a lot in other videos. But like, just on a smaller level, not even like the big things that make the headlines, not even like the essays and the bigger posts that she does and the things that go viral, but just on this like day in, day out level, this kind of shit is just being said. Comparing gender-affirming healthcare for trans kids to lobotomies. Comparing it to lobotomies. And to be like, there are no trans kids. This is like trying to make a bridge out of a fucking wet paper straw. Because where do trans adults come into this conversation? JK Rowling and all you other TERFs and transphobes have this opinion. Your opinion doesn't change the fact of the matter. Just like your opinion, as I mentioned earlier, of believing that trans women are men does not make it true. Trans women are still women. Your opinion that trans kids don't exist does not make that true. Trans kids very much do exist, and trans kids very much do deserve access to healthcare, but have your belief that they don't. Have your little transphobic views, but why do you think that you have a right to go after a marginalized community because you have some incorrect, misinformed, absolutely just bonkers view that this marginalized group is somehow a threat to you? Where did that even come from? Lies and bigotry. That's where it came from. As difficult as it is to be trans right now, I'd much rather be trans and open-minded with an open heart and be a kind person to others than be so lost and twisted in hatred. As angry as I am at transphobes, the ones that are so incredibly lost, I actually have pity in a way, because that cannot be a fun way to live. Question: if there were one thing you could change about the world, what would it be? JK Rowling responds, I would make each and every one of us much more tolerant. Where does somebody with that view on the world arrive at where they're at now? Because it's like the absolute opposite of tolerance, and it will be spouted of like,
well, they started at first not being tolerant of me.
It's like, in what way? Because trans people wanted some more rights? Oh dear, poor you. Rights aren't pie. So incredibly ironic. The world would be a much nicer place if we were more tolerant of one another. But tolerance does not need to extend where harm is being caused. It's just like, oh, can't we just have a difference of opinion but be friends? No, because when your difference of opinion invalidates who I am as a person and impedes on my rights and is a form of oppression, then that doesn't deserve to just get swept under the rug. If you want to have a viewpoint, but you don't use that viewpoint to impede on how I can live my life, fine. I will not be friends with you, but I will tolerate your existence. Be bigoted, but just why do you think that your bigoted, very wrong viewpoints on the world give you a right to impact how other people are able to function within society? That's not tolerant. So someone posted a cartoon that says, united we stand, divided we fall, and at the front are trans rights, which are on a tilt, let's say. And it's like a domino effect. We're trying to hold up the trans rights because they are, at the moment, the easy target to pick on. Transphobia is currently a seemingly acceptable in many circles form of bigotry. And like I said, bigots are onions. It's never just transphobia. Go back 30 years and it was homophobia that was more acceptable. Go back before then and it was racism that was most acceptable. And so what this cartoon is trying to show is that trans rights are kind of at the forefront of this attack that bigots have against anything that they don't like or understand. Before that it was gay rights, then we have women's rights. If trans rights really start to get pushed back on, if that completely goes, bigots need a new target to be bigoted against. They will go to the next most acceptable until that topples over, and the next most acceptable. That's what this means. It means it never just stops with that front domino. Yes, everybody's shouting about transphobia, but you scratch under that, and as soon as they feel like they've solved trans things and that's not a problem to them anymore because they've been so transphobic, they will go after the next group. Now, JK Rowling sees this cartoon, and this is how she interprets it. You've posted a cartoon showing that what you call trans rights may crush gay rights women's rights, freedom of speech, and freedom of belief. And yes, gender identity ideology is absolutely threatening to do that, but I'm astonished you're admitting it. That's either willfully ignorant or just somebody who is so closed off to anything else, they cannot see the correct interpretation. Nobody is admitting that trans rights existing are a threat to other rights. People are showing that trans rights being threatened causes a domino effect of threats to every marginalized group's rights. Because ultimately, the only people that come out on top of this whole discussion are cis, white, straight men, most likely with money. If you are not part of that group, why are you being bigoted towards anybody? It doesn't make sense. And her interpretation of this doesn't make sense. Is trans rights falling over? Is trans rights falling? It is the push back against trans rights, standing up. It is that push from the, the push from the transphobes that makes it go wee and knock over the other rights. If you just left trans people alone, all the rights in a nice little domino would just stay standing. Rowling bot forgets to remove the AI response text from their canned reply. Health-centric. Absolutely spot on, JK Rowling. The conversation on gender ideology has indeed become a tornado, sweeping away more than just leaves. It's like we're in a real-life game of Quidditch, where the snitch is truth, and we're all trying to catch it amidst the chaos. Let's not forget the real magic happens when we stand for science, safety, and sanity. #StandWithTruth. This reply engages with the content of Rowling's post, uses a metaphor from her own universe to make it catchy, and ends with a call to action that encourages standing by principles which align with the themes of her critique. I feel like there was a thing a while ago that showed that most of these TERF and transphobe accounts on Twitter were bots. In Harry Potter and the Prison of Azkaban, the most ridiculous thing imaginable that could happen to Professor Snape is wearing women's clothing. This is because it was written by you-know-whom. Well, if someone ever asks you why you don't like JK Rowling, show them this meme. Why does Joanne never talk against cis male abusers? Why hasn't she said anything against Johnny Depp or all the misogynists who agree with her on her Twitter? I've seen her very occasionally say things, very occasionally. And like the comparative energy put into that is like transphobic tweets that actually would help women's rights and call out cis men. Oh, wow. That's very low. And that's very high. These are the transphobic ones, just as a reminder. That is the disparity. Almost tumbleweeds going by when shit actually happens to women in society. But when there's an opportunity to be transphobic, wow, let's jump on that. It's not just that somebody's hateful, it's the fact that they're hiding their hate behind like apparently good intentions. But then where are those good intentions when it's not to do with what they're being hateful about? Rowling is being not very nice to somebody who's advocated quite a lot for trans rights and has a trans child themselves. Is one of those who'll go down with the trans Titanic, taking as many kids as she's allowed to take with her. This woman will never stop voluntarily. To do so would mean admitting doubt about what she did to her own. Again, the projection. Rowling is one of those who'll go down with the TERF Titanic, taking as many transphobes as she's allowed to take with her. This woman will never stop voluntarily. To do so would mean admitting doubts about what she did to an entire marginalized community within society. What we can say is that like we know that science and medicine supports trans people. We know that trans people are valid. We know that transphobia hurts trans people and damages mental health. We know restricting access to healthcare damages the mental health of trans people. It's like this is not about trans people or trans allies. All these things you're saying are about transphobes.
Mine was always crooked, always.
Did you wear similar clothes?
Oh my God, yes.
Different colours.
Yeah, you always had pink, and I always had blue.
Because you were the boy, Joe?
Yeah.
Because you were the eldest?
Yeah, and I was supposed to be a boy, so...
Simon John.
I was supposed to be Simon John. I even know who I was supposed to be.
Oh, they told you?
Oh, yeah.
She was a massive disappointment.
Yeah.
Well, any parent who is like disappointed in their child for something they are born is just wildly inappropriate and wrong and is going to cause harm. But that level of discomfort of like, I was always made to wear blue, I was supposed to be a boy, I was even told who I was meant to be with a name and everything. It all just like paints a picture. Some feelings about like gender expression and like forced gender expression. And on that note, that is the end of the video. But honestly, there is so much said by JK Rowling that the subreddit just refills with more content almost immediately. And I think so much of it, it's almost become like the norm that she just says transphobic stuff, and it's very rarely reported on. Occasionally things go viral, like her hateful tweet towards asexual people. Anyway, that's been today's video. If you like the video, think about giving a thumbs up and subscribing if you want to. You can also go check me out on Patreon. Thank you so much to my Patreons who are on the screen right now. I really appreciate it. And a big thank you and a shout out to my top tier Patreons: Night Soul, Sugar Joe, Jill B, Eldon K, Nesta, The Third Hat Man, Jaden Cricket, and Max Makes Mods. Thank you so much. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Much love. Bye.